It is Indiana in the Morning, presented, as always, by First Commonwealth Bank, and our interview with Martin Gibala today is brought to you by Bradley's Bookstore, and you'll find that in the Indiana Mall. The book is The 1 Minute Workout. Science shows a way to get fit that's smarter, faster, and shorter. His co-author is Christopher Shulgin. Let's say good morning to Martin Gibala. Good morning.
Thanks for having me on. Good morning.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Hey, we've noticed this, and we noticed this in January, really, because that's when all the fitness commercials start coming out, that all of the fitness machines talk about high intensity, back it off, high intensity, back it off. That basically is what we're talking about here, isn't it?
It is. It's certainly something that has become quite topical. We've been studying time-efficient exercise strategies for about 15 years now, and part of the reason is because whether it's an excuse or the fact that a lot of us lead very busy, time-pressed lives, the number one cited barrier for why people don't exercise or fall off their fitness resolutions is lack of time. And so we're trying to identify some other options, some more menu choices, if you will, that are backed up by good science.
And your book really delves into it. Why now? Why all of a sudden has everyone seemed to come to the same conclusion that it's the high-intensity, shorter workout that is going to do you more benefit?
I think it does come back to this idea of time. So many of us feel we lead these very busy, time-pressed lives. Public health guidelines are based on great science, but the problem is 80% of us aren't listening, and so hopefully we can provide some other strategies. We like to say that intervals provide a way to fit exercise within your life rather than having to structure your life around exercise.
As you get into the book and you do such a wonderful job of explaining the science behind it, then you come up with some actual individual workouts that people can do. Tell me about developing those workouts when you're talking to a general audience, as you are for whoever might pick up this book.
Sure. Well, the key thing is to get across this idea that interval exercise is not only this all-out, as hard as you can go, very extreme approach to fitness. Certainly that's one strategy, and it can be highly effective if it's suited for you. But there's many different versions or flavors of interval training, starting with the easiest that we call the beginner, and that's just if your only exercise is walking around the block, an interval workout for you is picking up the pace for a few light posts and then backing off. And as simple as that sounds, there's evidence to show that that approach, interval walking, provides superior fitness benefits, improves your blood sugar control, and can even result in greater body fat loss, for example, in people with type 2 diabetes, compared to the traditional continuous steady-state approach. So there's lots of different flavors of interval training, and what I try to show in the book is 12 sample workouts, all of which are based on scientific research. So people could pick up any one of the workouts and know that it's applied in many different ways. It doesn't matter if you're on a bike or a rowing machine or walking or using the stairs. The basic fundamental approach is backed up by scientific research.
There is a chapter in the book called How Low Can You Go? And one of the statements in it, I think, really codifies it for us. And it's the simple statement this: here's why. Intensity is more important than duration. From a scientific standpoint, how does that work?
I'm a muscle physiologist, so I'm interested in what happens within the muscle, how does it adapt to the stress of exercise, and it comes down to very detailed molecular mechanisms and genes turning on and new proteins being created. But fundamentally, the blueprint for that process can be triggered in different ways. And so one way certainly to do it is the traditional, longer, continuous approach. And so the analogy there is you're sort of pressing on the gas pedal at a moderate level, and you're holding it there for a while. So the fuel gauges sort of drop over time, and the body's reacting to the drop in those fuel gauges, and it senses that and says, we need to make some changes here to ensure this doesn't happen again. The interval approach basically is stepping on the gas harder for a shorter period of time. So you drop the fuel gauges very, very rapidly, but it appears that the underlying events that are triggered are quite similar. So the basic physiological process is the same. It's just how we trigger it. We can do that in different ways.
The 1 minute workout is the title of the book. Is it really as simple as committing 1 minute to your particular exercise intensity regime and then repeating that over a course of time?
It's a teaser headline, but it provides opportunities like this to provide some nuance and context. Where the 1 minute workout comes from, it's from research that we've done where we've had people do 3 20-second very hard efforts. Now, there's a little short warm-up before that, there's a short cool-down at the end, and there's a little bit of recovery in between. So the time commitment would be 10 minutes for a session, but within that session, it's only 1 minute of very vigorous exercise. And we've had people do that, and we've done head-to-head comparison studies versus groups who are doing 50 minutes of continuous exercise each session. And we've shown that after a couple of months, basically the improvements in all these health-related parameters that we look at, their fitness, their blood sugar control, is very similar, even though the time commitment of the interval trainers was 5-fold less.
Martin Gibala is our guest. The book is The 1 Minute Workout. It does include 8 of the interval workouts that you could do, plus 4 micro workouts as well. You mentioned the amount of time or the number of years that you have been studying this topic and how long it has fascinated you. The point at which you are now in your understanding of the exercise physiology here, as compared to when you first began to study it, have there been great periods where your eyes have been opened up and you've all of a sudden been awakened to new possibilities in this?
I continue to be amazed at the potency of these very short, vigorous workouts. And so when we first started, for example, we were having people do 30-second all-out efforts on a bike. There's a classic exercise physiology test called a Wingate test, and it's about the longest 30 seconds of your life. It's a bit like riding a bicycle uphill in sand, so that even the latter half of the effort, your legs are hardly turning over and they're just burning. And we would have people do 4, 5, 6 of those repeats with 4 or 5 minutes of recovery in between. And so it was rightly pointed out to us that, you know what, when you do all that, it's actually not that time efficient because it takes 30 or 35 minutes to do a workout. And so over time, one of our approaches has been to continually to cut down on the number of the intervals, and this is where, candidly, it almost verges into the infomercial type characterization. And so that's where I continue to be stunned at just the potency of this type of exercise. And again, it's not suited for everyone, but we've applied other approaches as well, which are less intense, a little bit more volume, but we've studied, for example, people with type 2 diabetes. My colleagues have studied it in a cardiac rehabilitation setting, and there's lots of other good work being done all around the world studying these different flavors of interval training and showing that they can be very beneficial, and almost anyone can perform and benefit from an interval-based approach. And I say that with, some of the most gentler forms of interval training are just interval walking. But almost any approach is going to provide some time-efficient benefits compared to the traditional approach.
You do such a wonderful job as well talking about diet and the theory behind calorie intake and how it is that we should approach weight loss, for instance, when we talk about our diet. Develop that a little bit with me now, because you have some very specific points: protein, caloric intake, all of those things, and you cover those in this book.
And we know that, the best way to control body weight, body size, body fatness is through the energy inside of the equation, so what we put in our mouth rather than trying to burn calories through exercise. A lot of people think we exercise to lose weight, and that's what confers the health benefits. And I try to make that point that, no, there's a really direct line there between exercise and your cardiovascular health, your fitness, regardless of the number on the scale. And so, you need to manage the energy intake side. And in the book, we just provide a few strategies. It's not a nutrition book, but there is a nutrition chapter that might provide some tips for individuals. This idea talking about the research around intermittent fasting, which are just brief periods of restricted food intake, for example, or some evidence showing that higher protein intakes, not crazy high protein intakes, but higher protein intakes, especially while you're exercising during a period of energy restriction, can be quite effective. So hopefully we provide a couple of lessons there. But I'd come back to this idea that for exercise, we want to do that for our cardiorespiratory fitness. That really should be a vital sign that we measure, just like body weight and blood sugar and everything else. Regardless of the number on the scale, we should worry about exercise for fitness. And
it's interesting to me as well that athletes would certainly benefit from something like this. I'm a runner, and I do that 5K. That's the basic distance that I try to go. And I start out and I say to myself, this is not doing me any good at all because I'm just plodding along, and so I do that. I naturally want to increase the intensity and get it going. But for people who want to be athletic and be fit, in that sense, but also for those who really don't have that as an overall goal. It's just they want to control their weight. Maybe they're obese, and they've decided to do something about it. This book applies to everybody, doesn't it?
It does, and you're right. We just want, in Canada, I know it's the same in the U.S., we just got to get more people moving. So if you're already exercising, good on you. You're more than halfway there. But there is this idea that intervals can be applied to anyone. It's rooted in athletics for sure, but an interval-based approach, it's not only about athletic performance, it's a way to provide time-efficient exercise strategies. And so the best exercise for you is the one that you like and enjoy, because you're more likely to stick with it over the longer term. So if you're someone who likes continuous exercise, good on you, right? If you find exercise that's very intense, uncomfortable, that's okay. The main thing is that you're exercising, number one, but if you're finding it a chore or a challenge to fit exercise in, again, I use this concept of exercise snacking. We think we think of snacks as being bad from a food intake side of things. Exercise snacks are good, and there's evidence to show that, for example, a few periods of shorter exercise through the day may be better than one longer continuous bout of exercise. And so intervals provide a way to fit exercise within your life rather than having to structure your life and your day around exercise.
His name is Martin Gibala. Wrote the book with Christopher Shulgin, The 1 Minute Workout Science shows a way to get fit that's smarter, faster, and shorter. Thanks for being with us today. I got to go do a run now.
Appreciate your time.